So I got some news. First of all, I want to say that I was surprised to see some comments. It's very kind. I appreciate it, and it's made me rethink a bit more about why I'm doing this now. First of all, dramatic reveal. I've taken more control over my life, and I feel a bit better. I find it easier to make these videos at night. Is the first thing I noticed, because by then I've gotten all my senses under control, and also I turned off the light, and I thought about a few things, because today nothing bad really happened. It was a good day, and people have been quite supportive. I went to the consulate to get some information on how to renew my passport, because that's my only valid photo ID, so it's important I figure that out, and they were very helpful. And I noticed a lot of the time I get a bit insecure when I have to do something on my own. If I can just ask clarifying questions, I suddenly become more capable, and that's a big thing. I guess that's a big survival tip. It was something I heard a while ago from a YouTuber. It was completely irrelevant to this subject. It's from a channel called Coffee and Cults, run by a woman called Ash, I believe, and she said, I think it's just a throwaway remark. It's not relevant to what she does videos about, which is cults, and there's coffee involved. But anyway, it's one of those sort of fun channels for a bit of background while you're working. And she said this thing. She said, if you don't ask, you don't get. That's what she said. I think it's a proverb or something, but it kind of stuck with me as one of those phrases. And I realize now that it's true, and I'm getting better at asking for accommodations. Like the funeral people, they wanted a meeting this Monday, 10 o'clock. I told them that I prefer 1 o'clock, because it takes a lot of time for me to get ready in the morning, and I find it easier to go outside, especially when it's really bright and crowded out. I find it easier to go outside at 1 o'clock, so I just asked for it. And we'll see how that goes. I even responded to the email after business hours, so that's pretty assertive of me. That's pretty Tony Montana. So we'll see how that goes. But when I get more information, I feel more hope. I'm far from being secure long term, but I've got a few weeks I can do things with, and that's good. And another good survival tip that I also learned was from this Autism social app, which was kind of handy. It's called I don't know how you pronounce it, Hiky or Hiky. It's HIKY, and it markets itself as a dating app, but it's for friends too, and they have this good forum section where you can talk to other people on the spectrum. And one of them talked about this idea called what was it? It was called, I think, something like Greek mosaic urn, something like that. It was a metaphor, because the urn, it has these depictions of people on it, and you rotate it, and it usually tells some kind of story about, Odysseus slaying a Cyclops or something. I don't know. But stuff like that, and it's always picture by picture. It's always the present, the past, and the future are not visible, and that's helped a lot. Basically, one day at a time. It's when you think ahead that you get all these things and you want to do it all at once, and it's impossible. So thinking that way has helped a lot too. Getting inside my own instincts, following my intuition, and so when I'm doing something, I don't think like, oh, this appointment is really important. If I don't get this, everything's done for. I've had about 3 of those now, and each time I found a better solution. So I'm getting a bit tired of that side of my head. And so instead I just think, okay, I need to cross this street to get over here, then I have to go there, I need to keep an eye out for the statue, I read my directions, because I always write down directions. I prefer a list of directions instead of maps, because I don't know how to fly, so how am I supposed to compare it? It's nonsense. But with a list, you can have your own perspective, you can see stuff easier, you can know where you're going. So I've been doing that. But the mosaic urn, I think, is really handy as a way to think and look at things. And last but not least, as a good bit of survival advice, is food. When you don't have a lot of money, I did calculations. I have to live on about €4 a day, and this is one of the most expensive cities in Europe, and therefore arguably the world, I'm pretty sure. Although, you hear about some of those places in Dubai and Singapore, that sounds pretty expensive too. But you know what I mean? Like cost of living in Europe is very high compared to a lot of places, which is literally a first world problem. But still. So I've been thinking about that, because autism is very much affected by diet. I spent 10 years wasting so many hours of my day because I didn't take that seriously. So I've been thinking about good food on a budget, and what I found really helped are 2 things, 2 nutritional staples, and I can buy a day's worth for €2. And that's, first of all, hummus, which is very good. You can dip it on stuff, you can spray it on things. It's full of nutrients. I buy a tub of that every day, just a tub of hummus. And then parsley. I get a bag of chopped parsley as well, just fresh chopped parsley. And parsley is full of minerals. It's got magnesium, potassium, and iron. And I'm pretty sure it's got a bunch of other useful things as well. So I get that, and I get some hummus, and then I got €2 left, which is kind of a wild card. It depends on what I feel like my needs are, but you go for something with calories there, even if it's sometimes it's a bit of bread, sometimes there's a packet of crisps. It depends on what your needs are. Like I said, on some days, I don't like having crisps, to be fair, because that's not very healthy. But once in a while, if your food is feeling a bit monotonous and you want some seasoning, obviously best place to find seasoning is crisps. So it's a good way to make sure that you don't get too bored of your food, and it costs about the same, just store brand crisps. But what I get too, which I find handy, is croissants, and especially like those really cheap store brand ones. And you just you dip them in the hummus, you have a bit of parsley on the side, and you're eating for pennies a bite, and it's it's actually quite nice, and it keeps you leveled, and you get everything you need to take on the day. So those would be some of the survival things that I've learned, and also learning how to identify safe people. I know that in a lot of autism discourse, a safe person is someone you consider safe, basically, and it usually refers to close relationships. But here's the thing: those people exist in the wild, and you don't have to be friends with them for them to be good people. For them to be, a bit understanding, take that extra time to maybe listen to you if you're having trouble communicating. So far I've discovered at least 4 of those people, just sort of within walking distance around where I am. It's not people I know too well, it's just people who communicate very clearly and who are understanding towards me, who don't treat me like a nuisance if I forget something, or if I misunderstand something, or if I can't figure something out. So it's good to learn how to identify those people, and I've been learning a lot about pathological demand avoidance, which is something I think people say it's a thing on the spectrum, but I'm wondering if not everyone's got a little bit of that happening at the moment. I think it's almost like a societal thing, almost, because I mean I lived for a while now. I've lived long enough, I think, that I get to talk about how the world has changed, and it feels like they're exhausting us. And when I say they, I mean powerful people. I mean, the 1% and all the people influenced by the 1%, I suppose. Authority figures, state mechanisms, corporations, and sort of how they affect stuff. And I think everyone is getting more and more exhausted. Like I think almost by design. Like all the bureaucracy is getting more strict. A lot of things like marketing and advertising, they put very high and superficial standards on people. They say we live in the most tolerant age, or something that I think we've said ever since the French Revolution. It's always the most tolerant age, it's always the most progressive age, it's always getting better and better. But I think a lot of the time human well-being and development like that happens in cycles. And right now it feels like they're experimenting with indoctrinating people through exhaustion. So, the news, they're always exhausting you. Lifestyle marketing and like aspirations and stuff is always pressuring you to move someplace where you might not even be able to move. Social media, likewise, it's always an endless cycle of information, always exhausting us. Park benches, they're getting scarcer, and they're putting hostile architecture on it, so so you don't have a place to relax and sit down. Everything is just it's pressuring us to move forward, but it's also holding us back. And when people are in that sense of pressure all the time, I think everyone gets pathological demand avoidance in a way. I think when someone asks for a small favor, you're coming up with 100 reasons in your head why you're too stressed to do it. And I think we're seeing more and more of that. I don't think it just affects people on the spectrum. I think we're more sensitive to it, but I'm wondering if it's not happening a little bit to everyone. It's I guess it's democracy and decay, and I don't mean that in like an alarmist kind of way. I just mean, sometimes democracy becomes better for people, and people find more success, more happiness, more opportunities, and other times, there's war, there's recession, there's pandemics, and we're in a cycle of decay, and it'll hopefully get better. Last time around we had 2 world wars, Spanish flu, bunch of other things. I think in the United States at the time you had 2 million registered members in the Ku Klux Klan. So, you know, that was another example of, I think, decay in democracy, at least in Western Europe and in the Americas. Now we're kind of living through it. It's an unfortunate time to be on the spectrum, but I think it's also an unfortunate time for most people, and that's a big struggle, I think. And now that I'm unmasking, I feel like I'm more observant of my surroundings. I don't feel like I need to keep my head down all the time and, like, you know, try avoid looking at people because I'm worried that they might get self-conscious or something, or that I'm, you know, that I'm being unwanted somehow. You know, instead I just kind of look around, and people don't care, you know, because I'm just sort of turning my head. Why would anyone care? It's hundreds of people around, nobody cares. It's not like I'm looking at anyone in particular, I'm just looking at what's going on in the world, and you know, everyone looks really busy. It's rare to find people who are just taking it easy, who are just waiting for something. Even when people relax, it looks really arranged, like they had to plan ahead and so on, you know. And I think yeah, there is a certain loss of agency in the way particularly phones govern us, and how everything has to be neatly organized. And in a world like that, I think autistic people struggle a lot. We're better at, I think, creativity than logic. Even the logical thinkers, I think, are usually, because at least in my own experience, because I've learned some mathematics through game development and the like, and at least in my experience, it's a lot of creativity. I struggle to recall formulas and syntax and so on, but when I actually apply the numbers, I often find very novel ways of doing it. I remember this one time I wrote a really beautiful formula for a mathematical curve, which I don't even know how to describe it, but it was very elegant because it started with, you know, a primary value and then a multiplier. No, I started with a primary value and then a divider, which I think was a fractional percentage divider, followed by another variable. I forget what the variable was, but it was followed by that, and then it was divided again. And the way that the divisions looked next to each other looked very symmetrical. And it was also very elegant and sort of minimalistic implementation of what I was doing. I was quite pleased with it. But also looking at it and looking at the way other people might calculate something like that, it looks significantly different. And it's not because I'm a big maths genius, it's the opposite. It's because no one ever told me the proper way of doing it. But since the numbers calculate and it worked perfectly fine, and it was also resource efficient, computationally speaking, it was no better or worse. But it's just, when I looked at it, there was almost a kind of beauty in it. The way, yeah, it just clicked something in me, you know that sort of Pythagorean sort of romance people have for mathematics sometimes, where they see it as something magical. It kind of resonated with me. I felt like that was the day I knew enough about mathematics that I felt confident enough to call myself a self-taught mathematician. So shame I don't have any university paperwork for it, that would have been handy right about now. I've tried to apply to some game developing positions, but no one takes modders seriously. And even if I show them my portfolio and I try to demonstrate my work, they don't seem interested. So yeah, it's a shame. And also I find a lot of the time I barely understand the position I'm applying for, to be honest. They always give them really weird and complicated names where it's like, you know, you look at it and you look at it again, you look at it a third time, and you realize, oh right, they want the guy who does the textures or something. Like they could have just said it in plain English, but they don't, and I don't even speak that language. So I don't think I could do very well in the sort of corpo world, I'm afraid. It just wasn't for me, it would seem. I've been talking a lot today, and since people are actually watching this, I figured I'd add something useful, you know, some practical content, not just talk into the void. But truth is, everyone's kindness and support, it has made me feel better, and also developing coping strategies, I suppose. And I hope I seem better too. I mean, I think I do. I got rid of the beard, and I figured out ways to talk better in front of the camera. I also find it easier to speak now, to be honest, when I unmask. And for instance, one thing I used to do when I talk to the camera was to always look at it. And now when I don't, when I can just look at my keyboard, I feel like my thoughts are becoming a lot clearer. I feel like I'm not fumbling over my words. It's like what's in here and what comes out here is now more the same thing, which is a very welcome change. And I guess that's all I have to say for now. Again, I find this very self-indulgent. I don't get why people would watch it, but maybe I shouldn't be so self-deprecating. In fact, I did kind of think of that, because I thought about what I'm actually doing, which is that, you know, life falling apart after my mum died, and, you know, losing my support system, having this disability that sort of kept me behind, combined with the fact that, let's face it, my family wasn't the most supportive people in the world, and how my mother, she kind of had Munchausen by proxy, but with like autism. She wanted, like her idea was this, and it sounds kind of messed up, but it makes sense if you understand her. But when my dad died when I was a kid, she completely lost it. And I was like, and her family has always been very, very awful towards women in general, but in particular her, because I think she was on the spectrum too, to be honest. I think that's where I got it from, my granddad and my mum especially. And she wasn't treated very well. My family has a lot of very messed up ideas about social Darwinism, and yeah, she was always, you know, told off. She was always treated like she was a problem that needed solving, like she was broken. Sort of how family treated her. So after my dad died, I was kind of the only one. I was the only one she had a real connection with. And then a lot of bad things happened. She started substance abuse, and then she abused me for a while as well. And then it got into, she stopped drinking for a while, and things got a bit better, but she always tried to make sure, and I didn't realize at first, because again, you know, diminished capacity, it took me longer to develop and understand what was kind of happening, which is that her name kept appearing on everything. My electrical bill, my internet bill, my rent, and it was like I was working for her, so
she just kind of made it out like, you know, she has a law degree. It's better if she handles it through the business. It's easier for me. I don't have to think about it. But little by little, she was kind of taking over what should have been my personal autonomy. And a couple of years back, I think since I was about 28, I started, you know, telling her that I don't think this is good. I think I'm getting kind of painted into a corner here, that I don't have independence. And eventually she kind of broke down and confessed that she had been doing it on purpose so that I wouldn't be independent, because she thought that because of her drinking during my childhood and how she abused me, she thought that, you know, I could never truly forgive her, and the second I was independent I would just disappear and she would never see me again, and she couldn't handle that. So yeah, she tried to make sure I wasn't independent, and part of that involved making sure that I never really got any support for my autism, that I always had to deal with the symptoms. She was very excited about sending me off to psychiatrists who, for the most part, just gave me depressive pills or like stimulants. And honestly, while the stimulants were useful, they gave me focus, they also completely changed my personality, and they caused me to develop a lot of unhealthy habits. I took methylphenidate, and it is basically synthetic cocaine. I know some people might get pedantic and split hairs, but it basically is, in terms of how it affects you and how it affects your personality. It makes you seem kind of off, even for an autistic person. Like, you get taken into the other uncanny valley where you seem more like almost a bit like that Bates fella from American Psycho. I mean, not in a murdering kind of way, but more in that sort of, you become more callous and sort of distant, and you act all like intense all the time. If you've ever met someone who's under the influence of cocaine, then you know what I mean. They're always slightly creepy, and that happened a lot with the methylphenidate. And when it was combined with antidepressants, I don't know how to describe it. It's like, the reason why the world didn't bother me is because I was completely detached from it in like the numbest way possible. I wasn't living back then, I was just functioning. I realize now that what I really need in terms of medicine is things that help my nerve system. So I like, sometimes I like, what are they called? Lorazepam, but only during emergencies. And CBD I also find to be very useful. And that's another reason why I'm doing better, is because for the last few days I've finally been able to take CBD again. I decided to put a little bit of money aside from that, because it makes it so much easier to go outside and to focus and to do things. And today I've been modding all day, been working hard, hoping to release another mod this weekend, and it's gonna be a big one. And I noticed that every time I release a mod, I see more activity on my Patreon. And I was going to talk about that too. That's kind of why I went on those tangents. But I realized that there's a bit of a story here. So now that you get what happened to me with my mother and everything, so that's like the premise of the story. And then she dies, and her idea was that, you know, she was going to die one day and leave me a big inheritance, and then I could go and live my own life, and she could have her cake and eat it too. I would be sort of isolated, like bloody Rapunzel in a tower. And then you know, she would die off, and then after that I would have all this money and I could do whatever I wanted, and I would have a good life too, and like everybody would win. But obviously it didn't turn out that way. She kind of put me in a dangerous situation, and I don't blame her. I understand that in her own weird way she cared about me and she loved me. She just had severe abandonment issues because of how her family treated her,
and because of how my dad died. And I get it. I'm done being mad at her. I'm done being frustrated. You know, she's dead now. I forgive her because I know in her own way she actually did care. It was just very twisted. But you know, it doesn't matter. You have to learn how to forgive people for stuff like that. And that's an important principle actually, and it helped me a lot as well because someone actually almost killed her in a hit and run accident while she was swimming. She got hit by a jet ski, lost the function of her legs for the most part. She walked on crutches very slowly. And when that happened, I was still very angry with her over the abuse, but I still helped her. I helped her throw out the trash. In particular, I would turn up once a week and help her throw out the trash, see how she was doing, maybe help her with some things if she needed something. But I provided her with that assistance. And even though she kind of ruined my life, I still did that for her. Because in my mind, disability is not punishment. Doesn't matter what she did, doesn't matter what she did to me. You know, disability isn't a punishment. And nobody deserves it. Nobody deserves that horrible feeling of being helpless and alone, even though you're surrounded by millions of people. Nobody deserves that. And so that's how it started. And then of course, as her condition got worse, I started doing more things and more things and more things. And then, you know, when she was at death's door, I was doing everything for her. And it was kind of traumatizing because I'm not a doctor and she's my mum. And like, you know, cleaning her up and stuff after she had to go to the toilet and things like that, it was kind of harrowing in a way. Like it was traumatizing. You don't really want to see a parent that way. It's just weird, and you lose all these boundaries that you're sort of comfortable with for obvious reasons. But at the same time, I've never felt stronger. While I did it, what motivated me, I was just thinking to myself, you know, most people probably couldn't handle this. I should give myself some credit. So that helped a lot because that gave me a kind of strength I didn't know I had. It was almost like the tables turned. She wasn't making me feel helpless anymore. If anything, I mean, even though it was through the worst of circumstances, she was kind of showing me that I'm more capable than anything else really. That I'm very capable in my own way when it's sort of on my own terms, in a way that I understand the situation. And it also made us a lot closer towards the end, because when I saw her there, you know, suffering and being all confused and stuff, I just, you know, all the anger just disappeared. I was just done with it. She needed me, needed to help her, needed to have compassion, needed to have love. I just kind of found it. So that happened, you know. That's another part of the story. Then, you know, my whole life falls apart. Going out to the bread line at the church, struggle to figure out the language. You know, like all these big challenges, all these tricky things. No valid ID, no working bank account. Dead person's name on my lease. Still worried about the landlord finding that out. I don't even know what electrical company I'm supposed to pay. Like, there's so many things. It is an autistic horror show. But managed to pay my internet bill. Today is the 9th, final day, and my internet bill is paid, and I managed to pull that rabbit out of a hat without a valid photo ID, without a debit card that works, without any meaningful assistance aside from customer support, who gave me the wrong information the first time I tried. And I did it. I actually did it, and now I'm here and I'm talking to you all. Since apparently people are watching, and yeah, I did it. And so the story kind of goes on, and I try to apply for all these jobs, and just nobody wants me. I mean, my resume must have been 14 pages long by the end of it. I was that desperate, just trying to kind of break down and explain why I'm such a outlier, and why maybe they should consider hiring me. I included my portfolio of like work I've done. I included every possible skill I could think of that I was even remotely familiar with. But at the end of the day, it didn't make me seem more qualified. It just made me seem slightly unhinged. Like I see now that it was like grief and desperation and fear. And it's just, yeah, the corporate world doesn't really want me. I have to accept that, so I did. And now, during this last week, I'd say, give or take, I've been focusing on my special interest, which is modding, something that a lot of people don't really associate even with making money, or let alone making a living. But at the same time, you know, it's a very new thing, and it's getting media attention, and people take it kind of seriously now, and there's cash flow involved in a lot of places. We get incentives to mod, we get paid incentives to mod, but by a lot of platforms now. And like it feels like there's a story there, you know. I'm doing something new. I'm doing something that hasn't existed really in history prior. I mean, technically you can probably find mods dating back for as long as there's been computers with, you know, exposed files and functions and stuff. There's always been people who modify games, but, you know, not like this. This isn't new, and what I'm doing is new. And I guess I can see why it's compelling. I can see how this is a story that doesn't need to have a bad end. And so far, a lot of things suggest that it won't. Like, I've had so many things that made me think I was absolutely, you know, just screwed. Like the passport, for example. My original appointment was 3 months from now. So that's a long time to survive, considering how the only cash I have at hand is from the pawn shop. So that's 3 months surviving. I don't know how, you know, like it's just 3 months of impossibility. I sold my piano and I sold my VR headset because, you know, I wanted to do absolutely everything before I started asking people for help, and you know, I have a perfectly good synthesizer that I used before I started playing the piano. I can still play music to make myself feel better. While it was a beautiful piano, and while I genuinely felt almost a little bit heartbroken for a moment when I actually got the money in my hand, because, you know, it's like an artist kind of thing. I feel like I kind of bonded with it. But, you know, even so, I have to survive. I have to get past that. You know, I'll miss the sound of it, because it was one of those stage pianos. It's an electrical piano, but it is a real piano with weighted keys. Like, it's an actual piano, but it's also digital. So I just had this perfect setup where the sound sounded exactly the way I wanted to. it was almost like a mix between a grand piano and an upright piano. It kind of, yeah, it had a gentleness to it, but it also had that slight ringing that almost makes you think of guitars, and it was just perfect. It was just the way I liked it, and that's kind of what I felt. That's kind of, you know, I'm not very attached to material possessions, but I get very attached to creative things, I guess. But you know, like I said, I have a perfectly good synthesizer, so I can still play music if I need to feel better. I can still play the blues. I'm pretty good at it. Maybe I'll make a video about that sometime when I feel up for it. And yeah, this one was very long because I had a lot to say. I guess it's easier to talk now. I found ways to make it easier to talk. But yeah, so I've been living off the pawn shop cash basically. Half of it I had to put away right away, immediately, just for passport renewal fees, and then I had to even add some because it wasn't enough. I forgot to account for taxi, which is apparently outrageously expensive. And tomorrow I'm going to a travel agent's because I live on an island, so I need to go to the mainland to renew my passport. So I'm going to the travel agent's to book an aeroplane. And I'm gonna see how that goes. But yeah, I just mean it's like there's a story here. I think this is something to overcome. I don't think this will ruin me. I think this might just make me a more compelling character to people. You know, not in a narcissistic way, more in a glass half full kind of way. I find a lot of ways to look at problems is to think about, you know, what sort of a person it takes to solve them, and how no matter how bad something is, if you survive it, that your reward is that you get to be that person. So I try to think about that. That's a good motivator if you can't find anything else. Just think about how you get to be someone who survived something bad, and how that gives you some sense of meaning and confidence. And that's very good, I think. And yeah, I suppose I get why people might be listening. It's a worthwhile story. It involves something, I guess, interesting. It's got all the classics. It's got, you know, conflict, drama, insights maybe. You know, it's got, when I say insights, I guess I mean wisdom, because I'm sharing some of the things I've learned. Remember the food stuff, that might be important one day, because it really makes a big difference. Make sure that you're good and healthy when you're doing things, and it makes you feel better. It does wonders for your mental health. Yeah, I guess I'll try my best to give the story a good ending. So I might see you next time again. I'm not gonna take an audience for granted, but it was nice hearing from people. It was very, very kind and compassionate, the things you said, and I'm very grateful. So until next time, hopefully more good news, or at the very least something that ends well in the end.